Welcome. So in this time, there's death and fear and everybody's staying at their house and they're trying to protect themselves and they're doing whatever they can to stay away from getting sick. And I think it's so interesting because we're so mindful of death, but when are we mindful of life and how we live and what we do and how we do things? I mean, to go in and lock yourself into the house because you're concerned with catching something that could potentially kill you, you do so much effort to protect against it. But my question is, what are you doing to live? What are you doing to make your life exuberant? The most effective, impactful life that you could live. And I think that's the kind of a question today that would stand if somebody was standing over you and you were, in a casket. What would they say about you? What would the things that they admire about you, the things that you've done, the accomplishments that you've done in your life for you, for your family, for others? What would they say about you? Would they say you're a good father, you're a good husband, you're a good friend, you were always there for them, you were a provider, you were a helper, What are the things? Have you ever asked yourself what you think people would say about you? Have you ever asked others what they think about you in a vulnerable state and say, good, bad, ugly, give me 3 things about me? Am I hard? Am I kind? Am I thankful? Am I appreciative? Am I hopeful? Am I negative? What really do people think about you? Have you ever considered allowing somebody to speak into your life? Have you ever even thought about allowing yourself to speak into your life to see who you are? And do you like that person that you are? And all of that comes to the point of, I want to live the best life I can live. And I felt hindered over the years. And one of the reasons I felt hindered is because I wanted to give more. I wanted to help my community, help my friends, help people around me. And I think I was struggling with that because of finances. And now that I have a business, I make more money. I'm able to do more things, give more. I'm able to help be more impactful to people's lives. I remember one of the greatest moments in my life, and it's going to sound silly, but I was at college and a guy came in and he gave me $100 tip. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I felt value. I felt important. And then I got a brand new couch and somebody's given me a car and somebody's brought food to my house before. And I would have to say the greatest connection and impact moments that I've had with other people are when I was giving to them. And I think that's kind of the question when you're trying to analyze who you are, what you are, and what people think of you. It kind of comes into effect of what have you given to the world? What have you given to your friends? What have you given to employees? What have you given to your community? What have you given back that really would kind of escalate the scale upward in your favor? Because if you're a giver, then you're making really impactful relationships, being meaningful to people, adding value to their lives. And then of course they'll say, oh, this guy was great. This woman, she was so kind. She helped me in my time of need. She was the only one who would talk to me after my divorce. What are you giving to others that others are in desperate need of? And in result of that, it makes you the greatest you that you can be. I think a lot of times we depend on the church, right? We give to the church at 10% and we're like, oh, the church should be, doing this work, right? The church should be giving out to the community. They should be giving to the homeless. They should be giving to the underaged mothers. They should be giving to the widows. They should be giving to all these circumstances because everybody knows the church helps. But really, that's a lie. I mean, ask your church how much they gave out last year. And you'd think that maybe in proper standards of, 10%, that's what the church asks you for every week of 10%. What if you ask them, what do they give out? Where do they give out? And most of the time, churches only give out for, they're trying to get back in, right? Advertising. They'll do a day at the church for people to come in, which really is the benefit of the people of the church. That doesn't really put food on the table for people. And some people do food banks, and I'm not saying they don't, but what I'm saying is the percentage of money that they take in, what are they giving back out? And really, it's so diluted down. I mean, even like the Red Cross and any of these other situations of giving, they're all diluted down by the buildings, by the transportation, by the logistics of things. And so the impact of the money is so minute by the time it gets to them. And I think, how impactful are you right now that you know, boots on the ground, who needs food, who needs time, who needs a hug, who needs grace and love, who's going through a hard situation with a kid, with a husband, with a spouse, with work. You know, and you see it. And there's no more better impactful time than you going and adding value by giving to that person. I remember one time I went to church and I gave a special offering. Now, it wasn't asked of me or anything like that. I just like giving. And so the pastor said something along the lines like, man, I would love to do something along the lines of outreach to the community. And I thought, man, me too. And so I went up, I put $500 onto the front altar pew. And nobody else did it. And, that was fine. And then the next day, this guy comes to me, and he used to have a $2 million business. And he goes, man, I'm in a bad way. It was during the recession. He goes, I'm in a bad way. He says, I'm going through a divorce. My wife hates me because we're just so financially in a bad way. And he says, I just need to get her some groceries. He says, do you have any money? And I was like, man, I just gave $500. And literally I had like no money. I was broke. It's kind of one of those things of faith. Oh, I'll give to the church and God will give back to me. And I was like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just call the church up and say, hey, I'm going to give that $500 to this guy. And to my utter surprise, on the other side of the phone, the lady said, nope, you can't do that. We're going to have to form a committee and decide what to do with that money and where the church needs that money. And we're going to have to say, is it children's ministry? Is it this? Is it that? And I thought to myself, I know legally you're not supposed to give to the church, earmark it for something. I understand that. But to me, this was exactly what the pastor was saying. He wanted to do some kind of outreach, and this was a time this guy needed this outreach. And the church said, absolutely not. Well, I stopped that check. I called up the bank, paid the $35 and said, put a stop on that check so that they can't deposit it. Because to me, they were basically saying, we are more important than that person, and you have no right over that money. And I've had another pastor do that. I said the same thing. I said, like, he has home churches, and I said, hey, why don't you let your home churches have some money so that they can reach out into the community? And he said, he met with the elders. He said, well, the elders said, we don't want to do that because then they'll just ask for money all the time. And I thought, well, isn't that a good thing? Because all the time they'll be trying to do outreaches into your community. And I said, all right, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do a match system up to $500 a month? I said, if they get 500, you'll match that. Then they can do $1,000 event in the community. I said, can you afford $500? Of course, I know they already got $1 million in the bank. And they never would implement this system because they don't trust the people. And this pastor actually said this to me. It's not their money to determine where it goes. And I thought, man, that is mind-blowing to me that God entrusts you to get the money, earn the money, build the business, to bring the money, and then give it to somebody else because you're too stupid to do what's right with the money. And that's what this pastor said. The people are too stupid who give to my church. I am anointed by God to listen to the Almighty God to know what to do with the money. And they don't even give 10% to the community. I'm mind blown by the utter selfishness of the church. And then I start reading in where the Bible says, give as your heart desires to give. What? Hold on. Give to where your heart desires. It doesn't say give to the pastor of the church. It doesn't say give only to the church pastor because he's the most anointed, important person. It says, I think you are valuable, important, special. You know more, and I'm giving you the right to give as your heart desires, to who, to how much, and to where you want to give. Remember when Jesus was calling over and he's like, don't withhold the children from me. And then he says, if you do this to the least of these, you've done it unto me. Now, here's what he didn't say. He didn't say, if you do it to the church, then I'll store up your treasure in heaven because you're blessing my church. He said the least of these. And the church is not the least of these. The church has assets. They have salaries. They're making huge amounts of money off people. And why? Because they're not giving to the least of these. And that's the problem that I'm seeing with this system. If I look at Christianity, the church kicks out the gays. It tells people, kick your son out because they're having sex. It says they're doing drugs, kick them out, abolish them. We don't want them unless they're not doing good. We don't want them. And then here Jesus is, he's going to the tax collector. He's going and he's talking to the harlots. He's doing all of these things that the church refuses to do, but they still want your money. The church system is utterly disgusting, and I hate it, and I have no part of it. What I want to be part of is Jesus' system. Where does he give the money, right? So what happens with the church? So Jesus is sitting there, and the woman's breaking open the oil, and she's ministering to him. She's loving. What is she doing? Her heart's desire. And what does Jesus say after the church says, oh, we could use that money for the poor, which is a lie. We know that. And he says, do not stop her. Do not. This is her heart's desire. Let her do what she wants to do with her money. And we should be mind blown that the church is demanding that you give 10% of your money. If I were to sit there and say today, hey, listen, we're going to give you some great information on this podcast, and all you have to do is for the rest of your life, give us 10% of information, 10% of your financial increase. Every time you get $1, give us 10 cents. Every time you get $100, give us $10, and then keep on listening. Would you do it? No, because you're so much smarter and wiser. But they create this system that if you give and give consistently to the church, you'll make it to heaven. But that's not what the Bible says. That's not how Jesus reacted to money. Jesus didn't say, always give to the church. He said this, he says, give Caesar what's Caesar's and give God's what God's. But he did not say, give the temple what is the temple's, because the temple has no right on your money. And when you think about tithing, in that era, it was the country tax. What are you paying for tax right now? Are you paying 20%, 30%, 50%? And that's my question is, back in this day, the tithe was tied to the tax. Did you know that? So when you pay taxes, are you literally doing the same thing that they did back then? But to me, you have a new covenant with new standards, and the church has kept the old covenant standards of giving. They've stole your money. And what I'm saying is God's empowered you to do what you should do with your money. We even think about this where, he gives the three people, and he gives one 10 talents, one 5 talents, one talent. And the last guy doesn't make anything, right? And then the other guy doubles his, and the other guy doubles his. And what do we see is that they rewards the ones who are doing stuff with money. And he doesn't reward the ones who aren't doing anything with money. And I think it's so interesting because I'd be challenged to say that when you give to the church, nothing's happening with that money. Nothing is being produced in the community. Nobody's saying, oh my gosh, I went to a restaurant one time and the pastor was there and I was there and I had a table of friends and I paid for the table of friends. And I gave the girl like a $500 tip, and I showed the pastor. I says, "Hey, why don't you match that and do your table $500?" Now this guy had 30, 40 people, all elders, leaders, and all that. He's taking them out again, using the church money on the church leaders, right? Giving them the benefit of your money. And I said, "Hey, I gave this lady $500. Why don't you do the same?" Needless to say, he didn't. And I think to myself, isn't that interesting that you want to have people come to your church to listen to you, but you're unwilling to do the things that you tell the people you should be doing? You should be giving. Again, about impacting your country, your nation, the world, your community, your house. I had this problem one time, and I was so tight on money, and my jobs were stressful and everything. There was always a problem with money. And it was because I was always trying to hoard it in myself. And I asked the guy one time and I said, man, I'm having such a problem with these guys in these situations. And I says, it just keeps happening. And he says, the problem is you're not paying enough money. And I thought, what? But if I pay more money, I lose more money. I don't make money. And why would I give people money when it's my money? And I realized I had a very inward, selfish motive of money. I didn't trust. I was just struggled all the time because I was like, I had fear. I mean, I was just bound with fear about money. And so I had to control every situation. My wife, I controlled it. I said, do not spend this money. This is all I give you, and now I have her, she has a credit card. She never asked me for anything. She just goes and spends and does, and she's happy. I'm happy. Even the people that work with me, I pay them more. And that's what I'm trying to say is if we're fearful about money, then it's always going to be in our mind that we're going to lose. We're going to be shortchanged. But when you're not fearful about money and you give, you're going to get huge results with people. A girl the other day, she got kicked out of her Christian home. And why? Because she was dating a tattoo artist and she got pregnant and she doesn't have a couch. And so we got some money together and we bought her a couch. Well, she's been over our house twice this week. She's making a connection. My wife's calling. They're talking recipes. They're talking about raising kids. They're talking about marriage stuff. Why? Because we bought her a couch and made a connection, said, you're valuable. Now she needs a bed. What do? We're going to call some people. You say, well, what if she keeps on asking for stuff? Well, then great, because she knows that we're going to help provide for her. Why do we want to damage people all the time by making them have to do everything themselves? Why can't we be the benefit of helping people? I remember I tried to get a car for a long time, and then I got this phone call, and this girl said, hey, I tried to sell my car, and God told me to give you my car. And I said, really? And she says, yeah. And I says, man, that's awesome. And so she gave me this nice little sports car, and it was great. It made me feel so good. I had another guy. I had a tooth. I was missing a tooth. Guy came up to me. He says, here's my dentist. Go get a tooth done. It made me feel valuable, important. My smile's better. And that's what I'm trying to say is let's make people feel what they are. They're the greatness that God's made them to be. And so what can we do with a little bit of money? You can affirm that. I remember one night I was with this waitress, and I was just telling her, I says, how's things going? And she was working at the Waffle House, and she's like, this is my second job. I ain't seen my kids, blah, blah, blah. I ended up giving like a $300 tip in Waffle House. It doesn't happen. And that's what I'm trying to say is forever, she's going to know that God loved her and gave to her and helped her. But here's the funny thing about it. When you go back to the restaurant, I don't know if I should do it again. And then you do it again. She's like, what? I can't believe it. You did it again. And then you go back to the restaurant, you do it again. And why does it matter? Like, if I go 10 times, that means I'll give her $1,000. I can't give her $1,000. Why not? Why are we limiting ourselves on giving? Why are we reducing down what a person's value should be to what's right for them to give or not to get, and that's what I'm trying to say is if you're a boss and you're working in a factory and you have people who are making minimum wage, raise their prices up, raise up their hourly wage. I know the government saying, let's go to $15 an hour. And there's a lot of places that are already paying $15 an hour. But after so much profit, what else are you going to do with the money? You're going to buy another house, another car, another plane, another this, another that. Let's start giving back. And here's the thing about being a businessman or having money or wanting to do things. What does the church always do? Every time they have, we have a building fund. Why don't you give? We need, $5 million to build this building. Why don't you, instead of giving to that $5 million, what would be the outreach that you would do in your community? For me, we did a kids camp, 10 years. We also did an orphanage for 10 years. We funded those things and we bought the equipment. We paid people. We rented places for the kids. We send them to the hospital. We would bring them to the beach when we'd go there. We'd take them to the hotel. We'd go swimming. We did presents. We did clothes. We did education. We did all of these things through the company of giving, and then other people would help us out. And that's what I'm trying to say is I feel like you can't really live is if all you're doing is giving to the church. I feel like your gift and talent has been buried and you're not being able to duplicate it like that one guy. And he said, I've thought that all I had to do was give to the church, God, because you're a powerful God and you'll punish me if I don't give to the church and you'll send me to hell. That's kind of what this guy was saying. He's like, I buried the talents. I didn't do anything with them because I know you to be a hard man. And my question is do you think God is a hard God and so you have to give your tithe to that? Or do you think God's a multiplying God and he gives you the abilities to increase? Here's what he didn't say. He didn't say that the boss, or in this order, basically the boss gave talents to the guys. He didn't say to the boss said, I demand you give in this certain way or increase this money in this certain way. He allowed them to do what they wanted to increase. And he even allowed them not to do anything. And if that's the way you want to live life, is not to do anything or give to the church only and never feel what it feels like to have a camp, have an event, help people, share your wealth with the community around you. I mean, think about it. If you start, basically you have one of your employees and they have a baby, and instead of giving $100, you give $1,000, or you give $5,000, or you give $10,000. Have you ever watched like Undercover Boss? And Undercover Boss, they says, well, I'm going to send your kid to college. I'm going to pay off this debt. I'm going to do that. And they do all these phenomenal things and the people are crying. And then they do like these flashbacks and they're like, yeah, that employee for 5 years has still been there, still taking on new responsibility, doing better, created the community around. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you can never go wrong giving. And when we're thinking, I shouldn't give more, that's the wrong thinking. The right thinking is, I cannot calculate how beneficial this giving will be in my business, in my community, in my house. Let's give to our kids more. Let's give to our wife more. Let's give to employees more. Let's give to our community more. What does it all mean? And I think that's when we're making the connection more with our community and other people around us, because we're sharing value with them. When the church doesn't do anything in the community, they share no value. And that's why people don't go to church, because they don't see any value in the church. They basically see a bunch of lies. Church says forgive, but then they don't forgive the gays. They don't forgive the drugs. They don't forgive sex. They don't forgive anything, but they tell you to forgive. The church says give, and so you give 10%. You give altarings, you give alms, you give tithes, you give all these things. You give your time, but then they don't give anything. You tell them, I have this passion to do something, and they say, oh, great, we need help in the children's church. They sweep it under the table. When's the last time you went to the church? I love this because I've talked to lots of pastors, and I said to pastors all the time, my question is, how many people do you have come to you and say what they want to do? And they say all the time, everybody comes to me and says, hey, I want to do X, Y, Z. And I says, oh, great. And I said, how many of them want money? He goes, well, that's why they come to us, because they basically give us a plan, and then they say they want money and they want help. And I said, well, how many of those people do you help? And he says, well, none. I said, isn't that interesting that they're willing to give you money every week, but you're not willing to give them money once? Every week, you demand and force and put on them the pressure of paying you, but then you can't budget in money for them? And we wonder why people call the church hypocrites. I'm telling you right now, I'm empowering you to use your money for you. I've heard church say, oh, it has to go to us so that it's blessed. Well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, because isn't there a new covenant where Jesus died on the cross and then gave us the keys of authority and power? So now you're telling me the cross didn't bless us. It's my financial giving. So then why did Jesus go to the cross if my financial giving is the thing that is releasing blessing to me? See? It doesn't make sense. It's a lie. You are important and valuable. You have good judgments. And God said, I am in you. I am for you. What does he say? He didn't say, it's better, right? Jesus says, it's better that I die, that I leave you, that I depart from you so that you can get the Holy Spirit that lives in you. He did not say, it's better that I die, leave you, depart from you so that you can go to a church, so that you can listen to a pastor, and that you can give him 10% of your income so that he can benefit, grow, be blessed, increase, but you're too stupid to be trusted with money. And I'm telling you, you're not stupid to be trusted with money. You're important, you're valuable, you are the living God in you, telling you, showing you, helping you see people around you and the value, and then letting them see their own value just through a little bit of money. It's one of the greatest experiences. I had a friend the other day, and they started it. They started giving $100 tips, and they cried, the girl cried, they prophesied, and they said, we'll never not give $100 tip again. And now their kids are doing it too. Mommy, are we going to give $100 tips this time? Are we going to do $100 tip this time? And it's so exciting and refreshing to see the family giving. You know, we do Easter baskets, we do Christmas presents, and we did 20 guys who were in a recovery home. And in that recovery home, they all have families. Well, guess what? They can't work. They have families, wives. They're in hard situations. So what did we do? We went in and we said, hey, listen, we're going to give you a couple $100 each person to buy presents for your kids, for your wife. We did stockings. We did games. We did a dinner. We did music. We did all of this because those men were unable to provide that experience for their family. And it was just so joyful to watch the kids open the presents and be excited. And we didn't say it was from us. Basically, the fathers had the presents around them, you know, and they're handing them to the kids because basically we said, what did you want to buy? Oh, well, my daughter wants shoes. Well, then my kid wants this. Well, you know, remote control and all these different things. And so we went out shopping for all of these things, got them, brought them to them. They wrapped them up so they knew what was in the presents. And so they're handing them. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I love that car for you. I thought about you, you know, when I bought that. And we were able to unite 20 families at Christmas time that would not have been able to have this at such a hard time of their life. You know, the women's at home trying to provide for the family, try to keep things in order. The husband's gone for 6 months, a year, trying to recondition his life. Is that not somebody you want to invest in or give to? And even if it's a worse situation of a person that doesn't fit that standard of somebody who's trying, are they still not valuable enough to help? When do we draw the line in the sand and say they're unworthy? Would you want somebody to draw a line in the sand for you and say you're unworthy? I know the church has done that and said a lot of people are unworthy, and I my right self right now say I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the church has done that and said you're unworthy. Or if you've ever felt that way, if you've ever felt like God felt that way because of the church has said you are unworthy, and I want to remove that line. I am sorry that you've ever felt unworthy in comparison to what the church has said, because you're not. The church has been wrong on so many issues, and I'm sorry for that. I think you are the most important and valuable thing, all of us connected. There's not a line, sinners and saints. We are all children of God, right? So unless John the Baptist is an utter retard, he says this, he says, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And I think, where do we miss that? Where do we say he takes away the sins of the saints, but not the sinners? He didn't say that. So why did the Bible put it in there? Because he's trying to prove to us all are children of God. All have been forgiven, right? We even read in Romans where he says, if one man's offense did X, Y, Z, then how much greater is the blessing of Jesus Christ, you are to be in control of your money. And we have that in Scripture where it says, give as your heart's desire tells you to give. I think I was talking to a guy the other day. He has a business. He needed some welders. And I said, why don't you go to your local trade school? Why don't you go, and meet those people, build a relationship with them, maybe have some of their welders come in on a Saturday or something, do like a field trip. You have a lunch for them, let them get some hands-on experience or see what you guys are doing with your machinery. He's got like $5 million in machinery, big, huge things, cutting plasma cutters and all these different things. And I said, why don't you invite people in to see so they can get a connection and give them, and even give them $100 or $500 credit towards their schooling. This guy got $50 million in business. I'm like, you can afford $5,000 and divide it up to 20 people. Make impact with the people who don't know what it's going to be like, but are hungry to want to have a job welding or working. I said, if you make that connection now while they're in school, they're thinking about you all the time. They're desiring to work with you. You've given them anticipation of what their life could look like. You can even talk about wages and different things like that. You can talk about what you provide as insurances or all of these things. Helps you connect with other people. And so that's my question is, where are you connecting with people? How are you connecting with people? Have you been able to connect with people? I remember when I didn't have money, I felt so almost ashamed because I wanted to give Christmas presents. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. I wanted to help, and I didn't even have the money. And that was one of the motivations for me to make money is, start a business, start making money, invest in the stock market, provide for my family. For us, with me and my wife, we've even kind of said, we don't want brand new cars because we don't want the brand new payments, because we'd rather take that $500 difference in her car, my car. That's $1,000 difference, and give back, help people, send people to camp, do things. We want our money to be used to help others. And I think you do too. So the question is, what should you do? How should you do it? My mother, she wanted to do a carnival, kind of a kids event, sidewalk Sunday school. And she went to the church and she says, hey, I've got this idea, right? And she said, it's going to be about $2,500. It's only going to be a one-day event. Can you help out? And they said, well, we'll have to go to the elders and we'll have to talk and discuss and look at the budget and make sure that all of the salaries are paid first. And then maybe if we have any extra money because we squeezed money out of people that week, maybe we can give you $200. And she's like, it's $2,500. And then they said this, they said, but we'll need to make sure that the church approves of everything that you're doing, and just goes down the list and makes it harder and harder. And so my mom comes back and she says, she's telling me about this meeting. I says, listen, I'll pay the $2,500 so that you don't have the church help out. Don't have anybody from the church. Don't advertise it at the church. Don't do this. Don't do that. I said, reject the church and do what you want to do. You want to reach your community. You don't want to reach the church. And that was one of the things is like, if you do a church event, then all the church people come. And so then who's the event for? The church people or the community? And then when the community comes, do they feel comfortable? Is there enough prizes? Is there enough toys? And I understand why the church goes to these events, because basically they're trying to get their money back for the tithe that they just spent that day. You can do great and amazing things. You need money. Church is not giving you money. You have money. You can fund your own ministry. It is legal. You'll still go to heaven. Think about it. Challenge people around you. What are you doing with your money? Where are you putting it? What about just starting home church? If you're just totally sick and tired of the system and you're like, oh my God, this is so right. This is not Jesus. They reject people. They demand things. They demand money. They put too much pressure on me, my wife, my family. if you want to reject this, start a ministry, start a home church. I empower you. I believe that you love God. I believe that you're going to search the scripture. I believe that you're seeking truth. And so why not share those things with people? If you like to bake, why don't you teach people how to bake? Young mothers, if you like to sew or, whatever you like to do, maybe you like to work with wood. Well, start a wood club, talk about God while you're in the wood club. Help people, finance that wood project so that fathers and sons can come in and they can have eventful, impactful time together building a birdhouse. There's so many different things you could do. And I can't wait to see the comments of what you're doing, what you've applied, to the testimonies to help other people see that they could do it too. I did a kids camp, no church. I did an orphanage, no church. I've given cars away, no church. I've given thousands of dollars away, no church. All of these things I've done without the church, but with God. He's in you. He's for you. You have the money. You have the knowledge. You have the ability. You have the relationships. You know best. Now go and start. Until next time.